Hello, I'm Jane Dutton. It is nearly 1 o'clock. It's a Friday, it's end of the month, and I can tell you there's no weekend feeling here at The Rock where the election numbers have been coming in. According to John Steenhuisen, there was a shambolic start to the morning when all of the boards went down for 2 hours. He's so angry that he's taking the IEC to court. MK, a reality in our politics going forward. They've hit the more than a million mark, and the ANC, anathema, they are celebrating being just over 40%. So the picture of a coalition looms large, even with Helen Zille of the DA saying that she's prepared to speak to the ANC about this. And it made me think about 1994, and so many things stood out for me. But what really stood out was the fact that South Africans had to put their pride aside, compromise and dig deep. And this is that moment. Let's go over to the floor now. Tsidi Madia is with the Police Minister, Becky Cele.
Welcome to the IEC's National Results Operations Center. My name is Tsidi Madia. I'm at the floor here at the IEC's Rock. I'm speaking to different politicians, different leaders, but I think one of the big question marks or conversations that we've had in the lead up to these elections has been one about security. Is crime intelligence on the ground? Are we facing a threat? Some political parties made a threat to this country's democracy if they did not get their way, and that's kind of why it's important to touch base with Police Minister Becky Cele, outgoing Police Minister Becky Cele. Good afternoon, welcome to Eyewitness News.
Good afternoon, Eyewitness News. We are fine, we are okay. We are looking at the security situation. I think we did good preparations on that one. As the agencies, the JCPS cluster, chaired by the Minister of Defense and Minister of Police, reporting to the National Security Council, chaired by the President. And then I think the pre-preparations, getting ready, getting information from the intelligence world, both the crime intelligence, state security, and the defense, telling us which direction we need to go, but also dealing with those things before election that might happen, the threats, the statements that people were saying, if this doesn't happen, this will happen. Some of those people were arrested, but also staying on the ground on the day, especially the day before, during and after, up to this point, we're fine.
How is the threat analysis now? How has it evolved? Is it lessened? Is it still quite high? What is the assessment about the security situation post-elections? Because now we're here, but we're still in that vulnerable space where we don't have a declaration and we haven't moved forward from these elections yet.
Well, it was a part of planning. Usually, we plan most from the pre and the during. But looking at the statements and things that could happen, it was a part of planning. That 24 to 48 hours after that, we're glad that when the announcement will be made during the day on Sunday. I think it will be afternoon rather than the night, which gives us an open space and open time to look on what is happening. We have planned for that, especially those provinces we thought they might be giving us problem. Your Eastern Cape, your KZN, and the Gauteng where we are. We did have some few flare-ups, especially with the taxi industry in KZN and Eastern Cape. The most significant one in Eastern Cape was Umtata one. We dealt with one significantly and quickly, and we were part of our rehearsal, and nobody else tried to take any form of chances after that. We are there, we are on the ground. Our intelligence tells us that maybe the risk would not be all that high as it was looked at before. But whatever happens will be there, and we will not allow any form of situation to get out of hand after the announcement. We know people will be celebrating, others will be disappointed, but they must continue to behave within the law, and whatever they do, police are not going to there to spoil the parties for those that will be jumping and hip and all that. But we again will not allow them to step out of the way, step out legal ways of doing things. So we'll be there.
And then just going back to that operation, I know that a significant amount of people have been apprehended. How long was that operation running for? Yes, it was in the planning in the lead up to the elections and during and post, but how long was this operation actually in place?
Well, a day before elections, we took a decision to meet at 7 as the South African Police nationally, all provincial commissioners, commissioner, the ministry. We meet between 7 and 8 to scan the country. On the day we met, after the day we met, especially coming after Umtata thing. Umtata thing didn't take much long, and it was the police that dealt with. Maybe is the only place where we invited the members of the South African National Defence Force, because we didn't want to bring a lot of them while they're on standby and their agility was shown in Umtata. We don't want to say to South Africans we're at war to call the soldiers to be out there. But if any situation needed, we'll do it as we did in Umtata. We believe that the situation has been handled very well by the police. We have about 98 dockets that have been opened a day before until today, and the 50 people there have been arrested within those voting days. 7 of them still in custody, 26 of them have gone to court, got the bail. Others, they were warned by the police and gone. We believe that that kind of preemptive and enduring response of the law enforcement has helped all of us to deal with the matters decisively.
Tell me about a province like Mpumalanga, because in the lead up to the election, some of the concerns were around Mpumalanga, but you didn't mention it as one of the provinces you were concerned about or keeping a close eye on. There was no concern from your perspective?
Well, Mpumalanga, when they were concerned by the 3 major provinces would be KZN, Eastern Cape, and Gauteng. Not necessarily that we did not look on other provinces, but it will be less than these 3. Northwest, Mafikeng, we did have problem. Rustenburg, we did have some problem there. And Mpumalanga, as you say, there are those people that would have done. All provinces have, but it was very, very minimal. So dealing with these 3 provinces, where we have even shifted the resources. For instance, we have shifted about 17 members of the South African Police Service to KZN, which is quite an expensive exercise, because as you shift those people, must pay them the overtime, but you must find them the accommodation because they don't come from there. But it's worth it when you look back and you say things were done properly. Though we're not out of the woods or not final, I think I can give the police the kudos, or all law enforcement the kudos, that they've really done their job. And that's why we're not going to allow anything that can take us back on what we have done up to.
Minister, is this your swan song? Is this the end of Bekicele in cabinet? Is this the big final mission that you will take on in service of the country?
Look, when I joined this struggle, it never crossed my mind, not once, that one day I'll be the minister. Never once crossed my mind. That I'm here now, I've been the minister for the last 6 years as a minister. When that time was given to me to do my job, I tried to do my job the best of my capabilities. When I need to go home, that's why I always wonder when people want the reasons from the president, why is he chasing me? Because you never want reasons. Why is he putting you there? When the time comes to go home peacefully, remember, the time did come for me was when I was a national commissioner.
I remember that very well. You made a comeback.
Yeah. I went with peacefully. Even now, when the time, in whatever form, one has done his job, you need to appreciate that you have been given that opportunity by the people of South Africa and those that you are led with. When the time goes, no business to make noise. Quietly go home, rest, or do other things as you can do as a human being.
And I would not be Tsidi Madia if I did not do this part. You wear many hats, you don't wear one hat. I said to you earlier, you're one of the few who seem still very happy, seem jovial. Looking at the results, we're at the results center. You serve at the behest of the ANC. The ANC, I don't even say it's in trouble anymore. It's clear that the ANC has lost the confidence of the people already. Your thoughts on that?
Well, jovial, I'm not sure. But
well, you did look a little bit happy.
I'm not going to be having a sour face moving around, but jovial, I'm sure that would be an over-exaggeration. I can't be dancing with that situation. But that tells us that the people of South Africa have spoken. We need to respect for that, humbled that they've given us the opportunity. I'm sure the researchers and the leadership will have to find out what really happened. Surely they say you go and correct those things, and I'm sure leadership will be humble enough and will have good ears to listen and go and correct those situations. Historically, the liberation movement ANC would not be the first time if this happened, and then it has happened with the Sandinista in other places, Nicaragua, everybody's come back and all that. So we will be working on the matters. Ours is to listen why electorate behave this way and then correct those things that they might have raised with us.
Thank you so much. That's Minister Bheki Cele, happy to serve the nation, not necessarily jovial, but saying that the ANC does need to go back and look at the reasons why is it that it's failed to gain the confidence of South Africans who've clearly, based on these mixed results, are not happy 30 years on under an ANC government rule. Tsidi Madia, back to you in studio.
Tsidi Madia speaking to Bheki Cele there, my guest Sanusha Naidu, political analyst. Yeah, I mean, he's hardly jumping around with joy, right? Like Nomvula Mokonyane, who I was listening to earlier on. And I mean, if they were jumping around with joy, that would be very strange considering their numbers.
Yeah, it's great to be back with you, Jane. It's a solemn affair for them, right? They look very depressed. They're trying to show a projection of some kind of outward optics that, you know, they're not really letting this board get under their skin, but they seem to be really at that moment where they're thinking about what does this mean going forward. We're hearing reports about talks within the top 7, talks around what kind of what will happen once the results are finalized, and that seems to be the trend. Even with political parties like the DA, on Sunday night on Sunday they're going to start their kind of strategy talks around coalitions. I think the two big parties in the country right now, the ANC and the DA, are kind of going into that kind of strategy mode, if you want to call it that. But looking at what that board is signifying right now, and with about over 61% of the voting stations or voting districts counted, I think we kind of can say that this is a par that we have to think about. And that par tells us that as much as the ANC has gone to over 3.7 million votes. The DA has gone to over 2 million votes. But the big issue there on that board is the MK party has hit 1 million votes.
Isn't that, and there's the board. Very happy to see it up after it crashed for a couple of hours earlier this morning. The MK party, they're here to stay, over 1 million votes, and that's more than the EFF, who haven't made the million mark.
No. And the EFF, when the results started to come in yesterday morning, you saw the EFF and the MK party kind of circling each other. At the time, the EFF was kind of maintaining that third position as the third biggest party in the country. But they were circling each other. They were actually circling each other, and suddenly MK tipped. And I think if we start looking at in the later in the day, when we see the bigger results coming in, when we start looking at the election maps at the provincial level, and you look at the color coding of MK in KZN, you'll actually start to see the kind of visual that we're going to see in terms of this. And I think also in Gauteng, in Mpumalanga. So this party has really made some interesting inroads in areas where perhaps we didn't really anticipate them to be. We did know that they will be there, but I think they should necessarily not be too glum as well. I know some of their party members here are feeling like they should have actually got an overwhelming majority. But you know what? This is a really important game changer on that board.
I mean, they've been getting away with it for years, haven't they? Saying we're reflecting and we, regenerating, renewing the party, and we haven't seen that at all. And people are saying, you showed me quite a funny tweet, which we might possibly not be able to say on air. Listen to what, John Steyn has, we were talking about him a little bit earlier on. He hasn't been looking happy. He's been avoiding us, it seems. But we managed to get a few comments from him a little bit earlier on. That's leader of the Democratic Alliance.
Look, I mean, I think it's a very good day for South Africa. When I said, tomorrow is a better country, well, today is a better country. We said for the last 30 years that the way to rescue South Africa is to break the ANC's majority. We've done that. They're going to end up in the low 40s. And that obviously, opens up a whole new universe for politics in South Africa for us to break the log jams. and to start building something better for the people of South Africa and our country. And we stand ready to play our role in that as a responsible party and the second largest party. But as I've said before, we've got to wait for the results to end before we can start with any major discussions. But my first port of call is going to be with my multi-party charter partners. We're 10 other parties. Once the final results are up, we will have a meeting and we will discuss together what we think the next step forward should be for us to work together. We've built up enormous trust over the course of the last year of working together, and the joint policy synthesis that we've been working on, the joint approach, has led to, I think, quite a good working relationship. And so I would like to chat to them before we open up any other discussion.
But you're not ruling the governing party?
I'm not ruling anything out at this stage. I'm just saying that I think it's too premature to make a call either way, and that my first loyalty and commitment is to the multi-party charter.
We were just talking about election satisfaction, and there's John Steenhuisen showing off a little bit of that. Talk to me more about that is Ben Roberts, Research Director, Human Sciences Research Council. Very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So you do a satisfaction survey. You talk to people once they've made their votes. Yeah. What have you found?
Yes, so it is a survey of, we did about 13,000 interviews on election day. It's nationally representative. Some of the main findings, it's really about all aspects of the election process. And the voters actually, despite the increased queuing times, and that did come through, despite that, voters are generally quite positive in their valuation of the election day experience. That includes all sort of aspects in terms of the ballot papers, the overall freeness and fairness of the election, so generally all the officials and their conduct. So it's actually an endorsement.
What questions do you ask?
Well, yeah. So it's a survey that's asked about. It's about 15 minutes in duration, and it generally asks about 30 questions about aspects just in the lead up. So like when they made their choice to participate, through to evaluations of all aspects, and even factors such as when they, what were the factors that prompted turnout? What were the big decisive drivers of that turnout?
And what did you find there?
Well, I think two were dominant. I think the first is still an inherent belief that one's vote counts. So that was overwhelmingly the dominant reason provided. About 63% mentioned that. Just over 40% as a second factor mentioned the civic responsibility, so that sense of duty to vote. So those were the dominant.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's reassuring.
Very mature.
And it's true, even on our general survey, not just the election day survey, that comes out as something that's strong across the board, including our youth, is the sense of civic duty is there. And it's one of the things that has been quite constant, while other sort of electoral attitudes have diminished over time.
So like what?
Well, I think that the sense that one's vote matters has actually swung quite dramatically. It's down to about 40%. Believing in that sense of political efficacy.
Right, it's going to actually make a difference.
So that's really dropped from about the 60% mark over the last decade. So that is something that we have, in our engagements with the Commission, I've talked a lot about is how do we shore that up and promote a sense of confidence that one's vote will be material to an outcome.
Is that dependent on the party that's in government?
I think it's a sense that partly whether it's the ruling party or also it can depend on one's sense of choice, and that choice can lead to a different kind of outcome. We've seen, certainly in the emerging findings, we have seen quite a significant changes starting to come through on the dashboards. That's the kind of thing that voters want, freedom of choice, and the sense that will be material. I think youngsters struggle with that a lot.
Right.
The sense of what party would best represent their needs and agenda, even though they do believe in the civic responsibility.
Do they feel a bit fatigued? I mean, it's all about politics, obviously, and you see things come to the forefront, things that need to be addressed. They often are not addressed. Does that lead to some sort of fatigue?
Well, I think what we're seeing is almost a segmenting of the public. And the one thing that is quite stark in the South African case is those that turn out tend to generally be a more contented South African.
Right.
The discontented have a greater tendency to abstain. So it's the happy voter and the discontented abstainer, which is what we're seeing. And
So the
so
key
that
is to make
discontent
people
is
more-
not mobilizing people to turn out the way perhaps it ought to be.
And that, you think, is where the driving force would come for change, right?
Well, that's what we would hope. And I think there's a sense that abstention sends a strong message.
Yes.
When actually it would be
doesn't.
better to come and cast a ballot for something different if you're not happy with the status quo.
And free and fair?
Free and fair was actually quite a resounding endorsement from the voting public. 92% unequivocally said that the elections were free and fair. And yes, it was slightly lower amongst those who had to queue for longer times,
Yes.
but not dramatically so. It was about 5 to 10 percentage points lower, but so in the 80% range for those who had to queue for more than 2 hours on the 29th of May. So even amongst those who felt they had to stand in that queue for an excessive amount of time and persevere, even they, despite that experience, came through and were generally said it was free and fair.
Anything else we should know about your findings?
I think the main things is that trust in the Commission amongst the voting public is very high. It's 84%. So even though it's low amongst those who have abstained, generally, again, it's another form of endorsement for the Commission and by extension the electoral staff.
All right. Ben Roberts, Research Director, Human Sciences Research Council. Thank you for sharing
very
your
much.
findings with us. We are waiting on Cyril Ramaphosa. Apparently, he's going to be here a little bit later today, and I'm going to bring in Sanusha Naidu, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the expectations around him. Stay with us.